Welcome to the What Sleep podcast, where we talk about all things crime, conspiracy, paranormal, and mystery. I'm Timothy,
I'm Bailey.
and let's get right into it.
So today we're going to be talking about Cynthia Elizabeth Hack James.
That's too much, honestly, though.
So Cynthia Elizabeth Hack James, or as she liked to be called, Cindy, was born in 1945. She was a 44-year-old nurse living in the suburb of Richmond in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada.
Good old Canada.
We like Canada.
Maple syrup.
Oh. Okay.
I like it on my pancakes. I like their colorful money, too.
Their currency is pretty cool. We've just got green.
Just green and then blue.
We've got actual figures that matter.
And isn't it, like, unterrible, too?
I have no idea.
Isn't it a thing? There's some currency where it's, like, impossible to tear the bills.
I feel like that'd be Canada. They've got nice things.
We have debt.
We have debt. Cindy was described as a soft and gentle woman with a passion for helping her patients. At the time, she was not working as a nurse at a hospital, however. She was working as an administrator in a children's nursery.
Okay.
This nursery focused on children with emotional and behavioral problems. She had recently gone through a divorce from her husband, Dr. Roy Makepeace. Roy was 21 years her senior, and they met when Cindy was 19. Roy was a psychiatrist and had a previous marriage with kids as well.
So how many kids total?
I'm not sure. It just said kids.
Just kids? Okay.
Just kids. I'm going to go with 2. That seems like a good number.
Fair enough.
Beginning in October 1982, 4 months after her divorce from Roy, Cindy reported nearly 100 incidents of harassment to the police.
Jesus.
This was the beginning of 6.5 years of stalking and terror for Cindy. In the beginning, the harassment simply began with a few phone calls throughout the day. And one of the first phone calls, we actually have an audio from it, and I'm going to have you listen to it.
Oh, boy.
So that you can hear exactly how this began, essentially. And these were very common phone calls for her. Again, some of them have audio. Some of them are just completely silent on the other end.
What the? Okay. I'm going to listen. Okay. Just creepily saying dead meat?
Dead meat.
Okay.
Normally it addresses her as like Cindy, dead meat, very, very, very creepy, and not something I would want to get, in the middle of the night or pretty much all hours of the day. She was getting these phone calls.
Okay. That's cool.
It's very creepy and it's very unsettling.
Just a little.
5 of these incidents were violent physical attacks. This got worse after she involved the police, though.
Okay.
So she did try to contact the police, but...
And in typical fashion, they were just like, nothing happened really, so nothing we can do?
Oh, we'll find out.
Oh.
There's a lot of speculation around this case, and most of this is going to come to your own conclusion, too.
Okay, got it.
So I'll read off what what exactly happened with her.
Oh, boy.
At night, she heard what sounded like people outside her home. And again, this is after she called the police, so it upgraded from phone calls all hours of the day and night to people. It sounded like people were outside of her home, which is super creepy. There was an incident not long after going to the police in which Cindy found 3 dead cats hanging in her garden.
What?
I know.
Why would you do that to cats?
Because people are messed up.
Why not babies?
What? You can't do that to babies either. That's illegal.
I mean, I'd rather it be babies than cats. I like cats.
Well, yeah.
Literally our first few cases were us talking about dead kids.
They're all innocent. They're all innocent.
Technically, we're all born with sin.
Okay. This cat incident was only 1 month after the threats began. Porch lights were being smashed and phone lines were being severed, and according to her friend Agnes Woodcock, bizarre notes began to appear on her doorstep. And we've got pictures of those that I'll post on the Instagram as well
Oh my
for you to
God.
reference. And I'm actually going to show you what those look like. And a picture of Cindy, just so that you've got that. So that's Cindy.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, again, she was a nurse, and I think that was her graduating picture.
She looks like a pinup.
Like a model, like
Yeah.
a pinup model. Yeah. I think it's the hair.
Yeah, probably.
It's the hair.
Like it just looks like a tattoo some sort of sailor would have.
And then these are some of the notes that were left on Cindy's doorstep, along with a picture of Cindy again. So they say things like "soon, Cindy," just like the phone call.
Merry Christmas,
Kill,
knife.
Yeah, kill, knife, pain, dead, pray for, you're dead. Just very nefarious notes being left on her doorstep. Very creepy.
Either this is like a super creepy serial killer guy or just some kids just wanting to freak somebody out.
I don't know. There's lots of theory. That could be a theory.
Oh, well,
It could be a theory.
I want to say I think it's just kids being kids back then, just wanting to be creepy,
Maybe.
freak somebody out.
I'd be concerned if
I mean,
my
yeah.
kid was making
Just dead cats in your garden. Now you have notes on your doorstep.
It's crazy. Well, either way, I mean, yeah, whoever is doing this is insane. So, kid or adult, I would be very.
It's not
concerned.
normal.
It's not normal.
Yeah. Killing animals is usually a sign of a serial killer. So
yeah, it's not one of the only ones, but yeah,
not one
a major red flag.
You start seeing heads of animals being put on spikes in your backyard.
Also, big yikes. The nature of the notes caused her to start withholding details in her reports to police out of fear, causing the police to begin doubting her stories and writing off her reports. And she was making reports often. So they started thinking like, okay, well, she was leaving out details and stuff, and they were kind of like, okay, well, you're not being super specific in what you're trying to tell us. Like she might have been withholding some notes, and saying, I got this note, I can't show it to you because of what it says or whatever. And so they're like, okay, well, we're not going to take it seriously.
Why would she do that?
Well, some of the notes,
did it have like personal info on it?
Well, not necessarily personal, but again, it was out of fear that she started withholding it. So it was mostly like, we'll kill your family if you go to the police kind of stuff. That sort of thing.
Okay.
And it is talked about later that she did receive threats to her sister and her mother. So that's why it's really kind of getting into her head.
Yeah. I mean, same, honestly.
Yeah.
You just start getting notes like that. It's like, if you go to the police.
You can't go to the police.
Actually kind of.
I'd go to the police immediately.
Yeah. But that kind of reminds me of this other, I can't remember where I heard this from, but there was like another story similar to this, where this family was moving into a new house, and like before they got there, they found a note attached to their door.
Oh yeah.
And it was talking about, I can't wait to see who sleeps in which bedroom that faces the highway and stuff like that.
The new blood or the young blood for the house.
Yeah.
The house require. I can't remember what the family was called. I think it started with a B or something.
I don't know, but it was mad creepy. And
it
I'm
is
getting
very creepy.
Similar vibes to that.
Another mystery I think we should cover later too. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
Very creepy. I think it happened recently, didn't it? Like I
think it was 17, wasn't it? 2017?
Yeah, I think it was 2017.
Something relatively recent.
One interesting fact to note is that Cindy at some point became romantically involved with a lead investigator that was on her case.
Ooh.
His name was Pat McBride. He even moved in with her at some point, and they were together for about a year, and this was all happening during the harassment incidents. It was later reported by previous relationships and other women that Pat was actually sexually abusive. This was way after this case happened, though he was eventually cleared of any involvement in Cindy's case. So they didn't find him suspicious of actually assaulting her or abusing her or anything like that.
Yet.
But, again, she's not there to, well, anyway, let me not spoil anything. On the evening of January 1983, Agnes dropped by Cindy's house for a visit and knocked on the door. There was no answer, so Agnes assumed that Cindy might have been taking a bath. After looking around a bit, just kind of around the house, Agnes found Cindy outside of her garage, crouched down with a nylon stocking tied around her neck. Cindy claims that she had gone out to the garage to get a box when someone grabbed her from behind and she caught a short glimpse of white sneakers, but that's all she saw. So she didn't really
Okay.
see her attacker or like anybody approach her or anything like that.
This okay. This is getting wild real quick.
It is wild, but Cindy made the right move and she actually ended up moving to a new home. She painted her car a different color and she changed her last name.
Oh, okay.
Because again, police aren't helping her really anymore. They're doubting her. She's now getting physically attacked.
Yeah.
She's got to go. This didn't actually stop the stalking, though.
Okay.
She hired a private investigator named Ozzy Caban, who reported that Cindy wouldn't tell the police the entirety of her stories when they questioned her. She would be evasive and would withhold information and didn't act like a typical victim would act. It's thought that the reason for her reluctance is that the attacker had threatened her sister and her mom, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
And by naming the attacker, they would then be killed. So he kind of held that over her head.
Oh.
Because it's thought that she might know who it is, but is reluctant to say who and wanted the police to find them themselves.
Okay, so is this like a crazy ex or something?
Maybe.
Is it the ex-husband?
I don't know. He was a psychiatrist. He knows how to get in people's heads, I assume.
Ooh. Oof. I solved it, guys.
Spicy. Ozzy had given Cindy a two-way radio to correspond with her, and this was always active so he could hear anything that was going on in the house. If she chose to turn it on or whatever. But one evening he heard strange noises coming through. He went to her house, finding it locked, and after looking through a window, he found her lying on her floor with a paring knife through her hand. He took her to the hospital, and she recalled being attacked and a needle going into her arm. It was noted by hospital staff after an examination on her body that there were actually no signs of needle marks anywhere.
So, okay.
It's very confusing, and her stories kind of go back and forth a lot. So you can see why police were like, okay, well, we don't really believe much of what you say at this point.
Okay, so either this is real and it's likely her ex-husband, or for whatever weird reason she's doing this to herself.
That's a theory. Yeah.
Maybe she's like going through some weird psychosis type shit.
I mean, maybe people who go through trauma. I don't know if she ever went through any like childhood trauma. There's nothing ever mentioned about it, but
wild. Okay.
Police at this point didn't take any fingerprints from any suspect and no independent corroboration was had. Cindy saw the attacker joined by anywhere from 1 to 3 people each time she was attacked, though police claimed that they never found a single suspect. So they couldn't find anybody who might possibly have done this or would want to do this. Not even the ex-husband. They didn't suspect him, really.
Okay.
And there were never any fingerprints taken or found or any physical evidence that they could have used.
Okay, wild.
Yeah, it's very strange. The threatening phone calls continued, but were always too short to be traced by the police. Because again, you listen to the audio recording, that was just one small phone call. Like it literally is maybe 7 seconds of actual audio. There were never any phone calls made while the police were present, and they actually started doing 24-hour surveillance on her house. And these surveillances were held for days on end, sometimes up to 2 or 3 weeks at a time.
Okay, so they knew that the police were staking the house out.
Right. And typically there were up to about 14 officers that were posted to watch for any suspicious activity, be it from Cindy or from anybody that could be around the house. There were never any attacks during the stakeouts. And in the time between surveillances, other attacks would actually happen. So it seemed like whoever was doing this knew that the police were there and had knowledge of where they were or that they were there, or it was Cindy,
Oh, man. Okay. At this point, it's just everybody.
It's just
everybody's
everybody.
doing it.
But the weird thing is that they even went as far as setting up a few surveillances without notifying Cindy beforehand to try and see whether or not she was the one performing the attacks on herself. Though, again, there was nothing that happened while they were there.
Wow. Okay.
So
that guess that kind of rules out my whole thing.
Kind of rules out that Cindy might because again, they didn't notify her. Maybe she could tell if they were out there at this point,
Maybe? I don't know.
but there's really there's no way of knowing. So as police became skeptical of the harassment, her parents believed her attacker was staying away to fuel the police suspicion and discredit her claims. One incident, and we'll find out later that her parents are very, very driven to believe that somebody was attacking her and that this wasn't Cindy.
Well, of course, they don't want to believe that she would do that.
Right. One incident, she was found dazed and semi-conscious laying in a ditch 6 miles away from her home. She was wearing a man's work boot and glove and was suffering from hypothermia.
What in the world?
She was found to have cuts and bruises all over her body, and a black nylon stocking, again, had been tied very tightly around her neck. And after being rescued and examined, she claimed she had no memory of what happened to her.
Okay.
So
wow.
Nothing to go off of again.
Okay.
Nothing
Jeez,
there.
this is wild.
In April of 1986, Cindy felt very uncomfortable with being alone in her home.
I would too.
Yeah.
I mean,
So she ended up enlisting her friend Agnes and Agnes's husband Tom to stay with her one evening, and Tom actually started hearing noises and what sounded like an alarm coming from downstairs. It was 3 a.m, and after some investigation around the house, Tom and Agnes looking around because, they're hearing some stuff.
of course.
They found that the basement was full of flames and her house was on fire, essentially. And the phone line was actually cut as well. Tom left the home to alert neighbors and saw a man standing in the road and asked him, and this man was just staring at the house. Like, again, the flames are in the basement, so it's not super obvious that the house is on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, it could become a problem, obviously. But it was strange that this guy was out in the road staring at this house that doesn't seem like why
Just
are you there?
Staring.
Right.
Casually.
So Tom actually approached the man and asked him to call the fire department. The house is on fire. Instead, the man actually turned around and ran down the street. Never investigated. There was no way of finding him. Apparently, it was just some
Did he not
guy.
get a look at him?
I assume he did. He walked up and asked him to call the police, but apparently there's just no way of finding this guy, so it was never investigated.
He is an enigma.
The police suspected that Cindy had staged the whole fire as they found no dust and no fingerprints on the outside of the windowsill, therefore believing that there was no entry into the home. So they think that it was done. So now
it's back saying, now she's, okay.
Now they're back to saying that she did it, exactly. In order to set the fire inside the home, it was thought that the perpetrator would have needed to climb through a very specific window, like a basement window, like the only entrance into the basement from the outside. Though, again, there was no evidence of tampering or entry, and there was no fingerprints found.
Maybe they were already inside the house.
Maybe.
Or, the whole no fingerprints being found thing. It's called gloves.
I mean, gloves, too. And they just
they're going to go through all this effort to harm her. I think that they'll think hey, I should probably wear gloves before I touch things.
Yeah.
And especially if they know police are staking out her house and strategically not messing with her during that time.
Nobody can be smarter than the police. You know that.
Uh-huh.
It's also noted, however, that Cindy wasn't actually home at the time. She had been out taking her dog for a walk at 3 a.m.
Okay, now that's suspicious. I don't know what's happening.
It's so confusing. So police found it strange that Cindy would continue to walk her dog during a time she was being stalked and physically attacked. And this was, I believe, 4 years.
You gotta do it and take care of the dog.
At 3 a.m? I mean, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, maybe it was like a thing prior.
Maybe, I mean, it could have been.
I mean, I see people out here walking their dogs.
I just wouldn't go out at night by myself. Like, if you've got friends staying at the house.
Yeah, I mean, if that's happening, then I get that.
You literally have your friends staying at your house because you're uncomfortable being alone there.
And then you go out and
walk your dog at 3
in the morning by yourself.
That's why they found it very strange.
I mean, yeah, it's strange.
Her doctor committed her to a local psychiatric ward, believing she was becoming suicidal. During her time there, her doctor stated that he didn't believe eventually that she was a threat to herself or to others, that she was simply terrified and was afraid for her life.
I mean, understandable.
Yeah. He noted as well that she had nothing wrong with her psychologically, no mental illnesses such as dissociative identity disorder or DID, and she also didn't appear to suffer from bipolar disorder. And these were just the notes made by the doctor. She left the hospital about 10 weeks later, which is, 2.5 months. So she was there for
A hot
a
minute.
hot minute. After which she admitted to her family and friends that she knew more than she was saying
Wow.
and wanted to go after the attacker herself. This was the point that she actually accused her ex-husband, Roy, of being responsible for the attacks.
Got him.
Cindy kept a journal as well, documenting her feelings against Roy. It's interesting to note, though, that during their divorce, her husband, being a psychiatrist, he stated that he believed himself that she did, in fact, have many mental disorders, including multiple personality disorder, DID, and that she was very unstable. And that was...
That sounds biased. I mean, she went to a completely different psychiatrist, and they're like, "Nah, I mean, she seems fine."
Could be biased.
And then as they're going through a divorce, this her husband.
He said that was actually one of the reasons for the divorce too, was that he couldn't handle all of her mental disorders, afflictions, and things.
Curious.
Which is strange, if you're a psychiatrist, you should know how to be able to deal with that or treat it.
Right. He should, if anybody, he's the one equipped to handle it better than anybody.
Right. It's just, unless you're a bad doctor,
Yeah. Cheat in school.
That happens a lot.
Especially now with online classes.
Very spooky. I'm afraid for my life.
2035 doctors been like, I don't know what's going on. I cheated.
Shortly after Cindy's allegations, Roy received a phone call, and we're going to go ahead and play that audio clip.
Okay. Okay, so that one kind of sounds like a female voice.
I was going to ask you, what do you feel like you're hearing whenever you listen to it? Because that's my initial thought when I heard it. I was like, this kind of sounds like a woman speaking.
It sounds like a woman trying to make her voice a little bit more
because it's very
deep and raspy.
It's very raspy. So it does sound like a woman. It could be a man. It's not impossible, but it sounds like a woman to me.
Yeah. So I don't think, okay. So judging by that, if we're going off that it sounds like a woman, then I don't think it's the ex-husband. Unless he had a very high-pitched voice.
Maybe.
I
don't know what he sounded like.
Neither do I.
There might be some clips and interviews.
Maybe that's why she divorced him.
What? Because of a high-pitched voice?
Because of a high-pitched voice.
That'd be the worst. Can you imagine?
It was like ear piercing.
October 26, 1988. Cindy was found hogtied in the back of her vehicle with a nylon stocking, again, around her neck. She claims that she remembers nothing of her attack, nor did she see who did this to her. So again...
Okay. So, she was hogtied in the car, in the trunk, right?
Yes. Well, back of her vehicle. So
in the back
it could be the trunk. It could be the back seat.
Okay.
I'm inclined to believe it was the back seat, though.
I feel like they would specify it was in the trunk rather than the back of the car.
Right.
Okay. I was going to say, because pretty sure by that time, that's when it was like mandated that all cars in the trunk have the little latch inside.
Right, but she's hogtied. So her hands and her feet are bound behind her back.
Yeah.
Together, essentially.
I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to overthink it.
So on May 25th, 1989, 6 years and 7 months after the first threatening phone call, Cindy disappeared from a mall parking lot. And on that same day, her car was found with groceries and a wrapped gift. Blood was also found on the driver's side door, and items from her wallet were thrown underneath her car.
Oh boy. Okay.
2 weeks later, on June 8th of 1989 in Vancouver, her body was discovered laying in the yard of an abandoned house.
Damn. Okay.
This house was a popular spot for teenagers to have parties, and it was reported that parties were actually held between the date May 25th, when she went missing, and the day she was discovered, June 8th. So there were parties going on, but there were no actual reports ever made of finding her body by the teenagers. And it didn't look like she was disturbed or anything. The coroner's report showed that she hadn't been dead for very long at the time of her discovery, maybe a couple of days.
Okay,
So,
so a couple of days, and there was parties going all the time. Maybe they thought she was just a passed out drunk person.
I mean, maybe it's possible that they could have planted her on that day, killed her somewhere else and then planted her body there. Because again, she
Yeah,
was found in the yard. So it's not
true.
like she was hidden. It was kind of obvious where she was. And I think she was actually found by like a city worker who was doing inspections and stuff, or maybe, I don't know,
Like DOT.
DOT. So
I
very,
bet, like, if she was there, like, and the kids were just
oh
thought she was
yeah.
some passed out person, and all of a sudden they hear that, they're just like, "Oh, shit." Like, that's a big, "Oh, no" moment right there.
It's just another very, very strange fact about the case. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, and they never really figured out exactly what happened with her body and
I
why it
wonder
was
why there,
there.
though, of all places.
And it's abandoned,
Eh, and people
unless
party there, maybe they thought, like, did that to kinda have many more suspects, maybe?
maybe, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Trying to put my
Blame the
mind.
teenagers.
Yeah, like, maybe make people believe that one of the teenagers might have done it,
Right.
and they just threw it there because 'cause they're used to going there
Yeah.
or something, I don't know.
Maybe. Not sure. Never figured it out apparently.
Oh, no, not one of those.
Cindy had been drugged and strangled with her hands and feet tied behind her back, again in a hog tie position.
Did she have the
She did.
okay.
Yeah, the nylon around her neck. And I'll actually show you a photo of her body. So this is how she was found.
Oh,
So
jeez.
again, her feet are bound behind her
Yeah.
back to her hands. Actually, I think I read somewhere that it was just one foot was tied to her hands behind her back. I think the other one was free. I don't exactly remember, but it does look like she probably was moved there because it
Yeah.
doesn't, killed and then moved there. But again, she's bound that way. So just kind of remember, like, just imagine being able to move your hands or like do much of anything when you're tied like that.
Yeah,
You know
fair
what I
enough.
mean?
Yeah.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police believed her death to be an accident or a suicide.
She's tied up.
Right. Exactly. I just don't
What?
understand. To most other people, it was reported that it looked like she was brutally murdered. Not only was she bound behind her back, a nylon stocking was tied very tightly around her neck. An autopsy revealed, however, that she died from an overdose of over 10 times the lethal amount of morphine and flurazepam. Flu- flure- flu-
Lorazepam.
Flurazepam. Yeah.
That's dang, that's a lot of morphine.
It's a lot of morphine and it's a lot of flurazepam too because it's actually a drug that's similar to Valium, and people typically get prescribed this drug for insomnia,
Yeah.
so it helps them go to sleep. Basically,
We should get
knocks
some of
them out.
that.
Right? What's sleep?
But not like the whole morphine thing, like, when I broke my back, they gave me, like, 3 doses of morphine, and that had me
Yeah,
spinning.
this was 10 times the lethal amount.
Yeah, so
So
that's, like, an
it's a lot.
obscene
It's an
amount. There was
insane
no way
amount.
she was, like, conscious after, like,
Right.
the 4th dose of
Right.
anything like that. There's no way she was conscious. But how do you get that much morphine?
I mean, her ex-husband was a psychiatrist. I don't actually know where she got the medicine.
Like, this whole psychiatrist thing, the insomnia medication, sure, like, I get that, but morphine?
I don't.
I don't think they necessarily can prescribe that.
Well, he's a doctor. I don't know the rules against that. Honestly,
I don't know.
I'm not sure,
But
but
still, like, 10 times, that's a lot to have.
yeah. Police ended up concluding in what I feel to be a rush very quickly that she had committed suicide, and that's what they ruled.
But she okay. I felt like they were just being lazy at that point. They're just like, "Eh,
Well, I
whatever."
mean, you think about it, it's been 6 years and 7 months of her constantly calling and making report because again, she made over 100 reports of harassment and incidents like this, and I think this was what her fourth or fifth attack, and now she's dead.
Yeah.
So, and very, very initially, when they first found her body, they actually were like, "Oh,
Whoops.
maybe she didn't actually lie to us. Maybe she was actually telling the truth." And then
But
after
let's rule it
doing
off as a suicide so that way you
exactly
don't take
right,
none of the blame
exactly
for it.
right, yeah. So no real investigation was ever performed.
So messed up, man. Do
They
your job.
like, the only real investigation that was performed where they did pictures, obviously, and kind of the standard what you do when you find a body, and then the autopsy, which is where they found all the
Yeah, they gotta have
medicine.
the paperwork and
Right.
whatnot, but, like, come on.
So they believed that she performed her own suicide and staged it as an attack and either died accidentally or intentionally. So what they think happened was she ingested the drugs in tablet form rather than injection, and that would take longer,
Does morphine
obviously.
come in a tablet?
Apparently. That's what I mean, it's
I've only ever seen it in liquid form.
I mean, I did too. I have that's what I thought, you know. But apparently there's tablet morphine. I'm
Okay.
gonna look that up actually if that's a thing.
Like,
I
what?
mean, that's what the police were speculating, that she took tablets of morphine.
Huh.
Interesting.
Okay. The more you know.
So there are
There is tablet forms of
tablet form
morphine.
of morphine. So again, they believe that she ingested the tablets, and that would give her at least 20 minutes before the effects began to set in, and that would give her time to tie herself up.
I feel like it'd be really difficult to hog tie yourself, though.
Right. Hog tie yourself after taking all of
And
that
then
medicine.
go over there and die?
Right. And nobody see you. You've apparently been dead for at least a couple of days, and from the time you went missing, because where did she go?
Right.
You know, where did she go? From the time you went missing to the time you were found, having been dead for a couple of days, and people partying around you, and nobody saw anything.
Right. So you
You
had to
know,
have died somewhere else and someone planted the body there.
exactly right.
There's no other real way.
It's very strange.
Unless they're the most oblivious teenagers in the world who don't notice a body in their front yard.
Right. Her father, Otto, didn't believe that she would have physically been able to stage her death the way that she was found, like we talked about.
Yeah.
However, many experts do believe, quote unquote experts, do believe that it is possible.
I mean, probably if you try hard enough.
It's just
but that just seems
insane.
like if you're on a time limit after just consuming an obscene amount of drugs.
Right. She, you can argue that she probably had practice if she was the one that did it to herself. Because again, this is like the fourth or fifth attack. And it's pretty much staged exactly the same way that she'd been found previously.
Okay, here's a question. How far away from her house is this place where she died?
Oh, I don't actually know. No. It was an abandoned house in Vancouver.
In Vancouver?
Which she lived in the suburb of Richmond in Vancouver. So I'd imagine not super far away.
Okay, but if it takes, let's say 20 minutes for all of that drug to kick in.
Okay.
She wastes time tying herself up, which probably, I don't know how, if she's good at it, might take her, 3 minutes?
Right.
But even then, that's 3 minutes. Then she's got to travel from Richmond
Yeah.
all the way to Vancouver.
Well, Richmond's in Vancouver. It's like a suburb.
Okay. So you drive from Richmond to wherever you are in that time period. I feel like the drugs would have immediately just kicked in like right there, and then she just fell and died.
Maybe.
I don't know. That just seems super sus to me.
Everything's very strange about where she was found, how long she was missing, the drugs, the hog tying. All of it is very strange, and I don't exactly know why they didn't investigate it as a homicide initially.
Mm-hmm.
And instead just straight up.
And another thing, in the picture, her jacket was next to her.
Right.
So how would that get next to her?
Well, she might have.
If she was hogtied.
She could have taken her jacket off and then sat down and hogtied herself, but she wasn't found for days after her death.
Maybe she hogtied her. Okay, I was completely different chain of events. I was like, oh no, she's gonna hogtie herself and then drive over. I was like, wait a minute, you can't do that. No. But
she's got mad
get what I
driving
mean.
skills.
You know what I mean.
No, it's.
She drove with her teeth.
Oh my God. And another strange thing about the case is that the coroner didn't actually rule her death as either a suicide, an accident, or a murder. They determined that she died of, and this is official on her death report, an unknown event.
Oh, that's a thing? You could just, we don't know what happened. Oh, well.
Well, yeah, you can undetermined can be a label that they put on your death certificate.
That's
to just to label that you died. And then because it can always be changed later in court.
Yeah.
You know.
Like with the Azaria Chamberlain thing.
Right, with the Azaria Chamberlain thing. Cindy's parents never doubted that their daughter was murdered, however. Otto believed that the police didn't investigate the possibility of homicide or of somebody murdering her brutally, instead pretty much just focusing solely on trying to prove that she committed suicide herself and did all of the attacks on herself. So he's convinced that they straight up one track minded
Oh
this
yeah. They just
investigation.
didn't want to make it seem like they didn't do anything.
Right.
That they could have easily prevented this.
So that's basically the end of the case.
Oh my god.
That's pretty much where it was left off. We do have theories though, and we'll talk a little bit about those too. And the first theory obviously is that somebody close to her with both immense skill and immense knowledge enough to evade police and forensics was the murderer. Some believe that it may have been someone with knowledge or ties to the police, as they seem to know when they'd be around and how to cover their tracks.
Also, that would explain why they was just super like, nope, suicide
Right,
the whole
exactly.
time.
If you
trying
was,
to make it covered.
yeah, if it was somebody in the police force, it could be a cover up. There were times as well that police were present for a few of the phone calls, though all of the phone calls were silent that they were present for. And it's unlikely that Cindy could have staged the calls herself because she's the one physically answering the calls. So who was on the other line?
Yeah.
You know? So that's, again, a weird thing. These phone calls, however, again, were very short, untraceable, and no voice was ever heard in police presence. The only 3 suspects, quote unquote, that were ever considered were her ex-husband, Pat McBride, the lead investigator that she was in a short relationship with, and then, of course, the strange man that was standing on the street when the fire broke out.
But they never did anything with him.
They never really investigated it. They never really technically considered them suspects, though if they had to, those would be the 3 main ones.
Okay. See, my only thing with that is that, as far as I'm aware, they're all men other than this strange man that, I don't know, could have just been a woman. He couldn't describe the person, apparently.
Yeah, it's
But
very botched. It's a rough case because it never really got handled properly. I think that's really what it comes down to.
From day one, it just wasn't handled properly. But
and a second theory that's probably very unlikely comes from Cindy's journal. They had gone on vacation, her and Roy, before they got divorced. They had gone on vacation, and she claims to have witnessed Roy and his friend kill and cut up the body of a stranger, which would lead...
What? What? Hold the phone.
Right, and this was in Cindy's journal. So that's why this is just a second theory because, again, pointing to Roy, but it also points to mental instability because if she just imagined that or something, and put it in her journal, or Roy could be a serial killer. A lot of people take that and say, he could have been a serial killer and had to get rid of her as a witness.
But why the torture for 6 years?
He's a psychiatrist. Gotta get in her head.
Oh my god.
One thing that she did say though was that when she went to the psychiatric ward, was that she was convinced that instead of actually trying to do harm to her initially, she was convinced that whoever was doing it was trying to literally scare her to death, kill her by scaring her so much, heart attack or whatever.
That's okay.
So, in the third and last theory that we'll talk about is the most widely believed one, that Cindy did everything herself. It's, of course, claimed by a few that she was mentally ill, with some claiming she had DID, explaining why she wouldn't remember any of the attacks. Because I think it's a thing that if you kind of go into your split personality state or your dissociative state, you don't really remember what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, I don't know anyone who has that, so I have no idea.
I don't either. But I think from what I assumed before reading this was that you were aware while you were presenting as a different personality.
So the only thing that I've ever experienced with that is the movie Split. Don't know if you've ever seen that.
Right, yeah. It's a good movie, but I don't think it's a good representation.
I mean, as far as I know from behind the scenes, he actually studied people with the disorder.
Really?
So he could kind of mimic how they just suddenly,
right.
switch personalities and stuff.
That's a good movie.
But granted, they probably took some creative leeway with it just
Right.
to like add that extra tension, but between
Hollywood.
him and all of his other personalities, they were all their own being and they all remembered things that they
Right.
did.
Yeah, exactly, but
But like I said, they could have just did that for story. So I have
theatrical,
no
yeah.
idea if people remember it. Maybe
Yeah.
some do and some don't.
They
I don't
might
know. I'm not a
well,
doctor.
this theory comes from the assumption that she didn't remember. She couldn't remember if she presented a different personality.
But that doesn't
So,
explain the times where she did remember the attacks, though. Like in the garage, where she specifically
right.
remembered the
Right.
dude running away in the white sneakers.
Again, everything's strange. That's why we're filing this one under mystery and not murder.
Oh, man.
In
Okay.
any case, the death of Cindy James remains open to speculation, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I honestly believe that it might have been like that investigator because he probably has ties to the police, right?
Well, he's an investigator.
Yeah. So he has ties to the police, so maybe he would
He
know
is
when they were
police.
staking him out and whatnot.
Right.
I don't know.
Some
I don't know.
people, it's a good theory. Honestly, like after going through all of the notes and all of the research that I did on it, I still feel very left very confused.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's
I'm still very confused how people just believe that she did it herself, apparently.
yeah, hogtied herself after drugging herself and then planted herself without anybody knowing where she was for 2 weeks. Nobody saw her.
Right.
Like you
that
have
just
to
makes
eat.
no sense.
You have to eat. Somebody's gonna see you get unless she prepared for it. But it's ruled a suicide.
That's dumb. That is just dumb.
It is very, very strange. Well, if you like the episode, please leave a like and subscribe. Our podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
And then be sure to follow us on any social media to stay up to date on any new episodes and for any news on the episodes, as well as some extras like pictures and other things like that, audio clips. You can find us on Twitter at What Sleep Pod, Instagram at What Sleep Podcast. We do have a subreddit, What Sleep Podcast, and then you can find us on Facebook at What Sleep Podcast as well.
I do also want to say thank you to everybody that has subscribed and followed us so far. Like the growth that we've seen has been super awesome and like very motivational to keep going with this. So I do want to say I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it a lot. And it helps us crank out these episodes even faster for you guys.
Yes.
So
very cool. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, stay tuned. Bye.